Tonight, Babajide Ogusawo, our data consultant, will share insights on revenue sharing and allocation of responsibilities. It's great to have you, Babajide.
Good evening, Ayatollah.
All right, so I'm going to start with a double-barreled question. What is the current state of revenue sharing in Nigeria? And of course, is there any significant disadvantage to that?
So the key number is 419, and I'll share a bit more about what 419 really represents when it comes to Nigeria. But it depends on who you ask, is there an advantage or disadvantage. But let's remember that exactly on this day, 6 dozen years ago, I'm talking about on this day in 1947, the discussion was also about partitioning, distribution, but then it was about how should Palestinians and the Jewish nation be distributed. And that was the discussion happening at the United Nations, distribution. Tonight we are talking about how should revenue be distributed. Let's not forget...
Even with the call of restructuring, coming up here and there. But anyway, let's focus on...
Well, here's why this discussion is important. Let's take a look at how the net revenue to states has been in the last 5 years, because it allows us to really understand what exactly is going on. Is the revenue that states are getting increasing, or is it decreasing?
Dwindling.
And if we look at it, here's why there's a call for restructuring and there's a call for how should we share revenue that will be used for infrastructure development. We've seen that between January 20 and September 2016, we've seen there was over 968 billion from the federation account to states. In 2017, we saw that states had more money relative to 2016, 1.2 trillion naira. And in 2018, between January and September 2018, the 36 states in Nigeria had collected 1.8 trillion naira from the federation account.
That's massive.
That's massive. But here's what has happened in the last 2 years, even though there was no recession. In 2019, we saw that number decline. No longer 1.8 trillion naira within the first 9 months of 2018. It had declined to 1.7 trillion naira, only available to the 36 states. And this year, based on the evidence from the National Bureau of Statistics, the states have collected even less money than they did in 2019. Don't forget the recession started only, that was official based on the recent figures. And so we've seen that this year, relative to last year, the states had less money available. Relative to the peak of 2018, less money available. And when less money is available, it simply means that states will prioritize paying civil servants and there will be less money available for development, for healthcare, for education. And
which has been let me not say problem, well, a challenge for so many years. I mean, the bulk of all that money and getting to pay salaries of civil servants, and it just keeps going back and forth year in, year out. And we're still talking about that even in 2020.
Yes, we're still talking about it in 2020. Well, this is the time that we need to let states understand that there's a need for more accountability and priority when it comes to public finance management. So it's no longer the days, we're no longer at that era where all the energy and focus is on the federal government. Let's not forget, the states get money from the federation account, not the federal government's budget. So the federal government's budget is on its own. All this money that we've shown tonight comes from the federation account, and the federal government of Nigeria's budget is not directly related to the federation account. In other words, whatever goes into the federation account has already statutorily been appropriated for the states. And so even though all revenue is the major revenue that goes into the federation account, the federal government gets most of that. The states get a lot, and the local governments as well get a lot of money. So the focus now is, now that all revenue is declining, the states have to be more accountable and more transparent with how they manage their finances.
Which brings us to the question of how the equitable is the sharing of formula, especially as it affects the geopolitical zones, the 6 geopolitical zones. You talk about in times past when we had perhaps just 3 regions or 4 regions. A particular region will definitely want to have the bulk of the share of the rate, but now we have 6 geopolitical zones. How is that?
6 geopolitical zones, but I started with that keyword 419. What do I mean by 419, Ayo? Now, when we speak about the Nigerian structure, 774 local governments, we forget to talk about that there are 419 local governments in northern Nigeria. Northern Nigeria classified as the northwest, the north central, and the northeast. So that's where we have majority. Over 50% of Nigeria's local government is in the north, number one. Number two, over 75% of Nigeria's land mass is in the north. So we've seen 2 things. Most of Nigeria's local government in the north. The fact is more than 75, you heard me right, percent of Nigeria's landmass is in the north. So the question is, how much revenue from the federation account goes to the north? And if we focus on that pie chart, that shows us the distribution of revenue, how much revenue has each region gotten this year. If we just focus on that distribution, here's what you'll notice. Yes, the South-South accounts for over 31% of that revenue on that pie chart. But the evidence and the summary from that information, based on the available evidence from the National Bureau of Statistics, shows that even though more than half of Nigeria's landmass is in the north, even though more than half of Nigeria's local governments located in the north, this year only 43% of money that has been distributed from the federation account has gone to those 19 states in the north. In other words, the north is very ripe, based on this information, for underdevelopment and for the challenges that we see, poverty. But again, the concerns from the South-South and from other regions is the oil is produced from the South-South, and because there's even less money available because of declining oil prices, the South-South are saying they need more funds. The Southeast are saying, based on the evidence available, the Southeastern region is the region that's seen the least amount of revenue this year, only 11%. The Southeast is saying they need more money.
And I'm sure the Southwest too also have their own.
Oh, the Southwest is are saying so, and the North are saying we have the largest land area, we have the highest population, yet we collect the least revenue. So this is the time for us to think of history. How has this been done in previously?
And then, of course, I want to quickly before we go, how much impact, of course, do you think the state of recession will in fact affect the budget of the respective states at this point in time?
From the evidence we've seen, even before the recession, we've seen a decline in revenue available to the states. The recession will have a huge impact because most of the states' budgets most of the states are funded from the federation accounts. A lot of states don't generate sufficient internal generated revenue to be able to finance the sort of standard of living and quality of life that Nigerians and the common man deserves. So the question is, what is the solution? And the solution is by looking at history. In 2002, if we look back at history, Nigeria was growing at double digits. In 2004, Nigeria was going at double digits. And remember, let's take a look at what
we definitely
a wise man once said about Nigeria's history.
So much time to go into all of that.
Nigeria's history really holds the future. If we don't carefully consider our history, if we take a look at it, if we don't carefully consider our history, just as Bolabo Ogunsanwo has said, then there shall be challenges not just in the present, but
challenges even in the future.
Challenges even in the future.
Our data consultant, Babajide Ogunsanwo, thank you so much for your thoughts on the news at 10.
Oh, and by the way, Bolabo Ogunsanwo was the Elvis Presley of Africa's journalism.
All right then.